good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Chamber Live weekly brief. And it's Thursday, the 23rd of July. So, on to our first section, and the team we're going to open up today is our membership team. And I'd like to ask Reet Dalu to join us now. Reet.
Hello. Hi,
good
everybody.
Afternoon. You're on today, and you've got some news, haven't you? Some exciting news about a new service that we're launching. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. So we're launching a new member service next week. It's called the Chamber Finance Finder, which we're really, really excited about. So over the kind of recent months, we've identified a gap in the market where businesses have needed our help with kind of accessing funding and grants. So this is an online platform where businesses can create a profile, populate their details and apply for finance, and that platform will match members' businesses with the right funding solutions.
Okay, that sounds really, really good. And what sort of finance can be accessed through the platform?
The great thing about the platform is that it lists funding, finance, grants and equity. So you can add all of your search criteria, including finance types, the amount you might require, any repayment terms, and then you'll only be displayed with the results that match what you're looking for.
Okay, that's good. And obviously, over the last few months, there's been a lot of initiatives launched by government and that's been available to help businesses through COVID. I'm assuming these are included as well as other forms of finance as well.
Yeah, absolutely, they're included. So it takes a couple of minutes to register for a free account, and then once you've completed the criteria, they give you the results for the bounce back loans, the CBIL schemes, and they'll also give you an eligibility criteria too. And in addition to that, you can see any non-government funding options, and then you can track your progress with where you're up to on certain funding solutions.
So it covers the whole range of finance that businesses may wish to apply for and look for, which sounds absolutely superb. And it has been a bit of a gap, hasn't it, in what we offer as a chairman. So this has really come just at the right time, I think, for a lot of people. Tell me, how can businesses actually find out more about this?
Yeah, of course. So we've set up a page on our website with a little bit more information, and we'll pop the link in the chat in a little while. We are also hosting a webinar on the 28th of July at 9, which will cover financing for your business and cutting costs to achieve post-COVID-19 success. And again, we'll circulate that following the session. And as always, if you want any information on any of this or any of your member services, then you can just ask your account manager.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thanks very much, Reet. And the link has just gone up in the chat post there. And again, I think it's so important because this is a brand new service that's been developed that we're launching now. We heard last week around the skills brokerage program as well, another brand new service that we're offering to help and support business. So I think more and more that we can do this as we're going into what could be a tricky few months, maybe a year or so, coming up with all sorts of demands. I think it's so important that we can offer these things to help businesses through what could be tough trading periods coming up in the next period or so. So thanks very much, Reet, for that. Just sticking with membership, last week we had Matthew on from All Star Lanes Bowling just to give a quick overview as to what was going on in the hospitality sector. Of course, in the last couple of weeks, things have started to reopen again. And today we've got somebody else from the sector. I'd like to ask Julian Tee now to join us. He's from Condor Hotels. He's the hotel director there. And Julian, if you can just outline a little bit about your role within the company and what you actually do.
Oh, absolutely. So thanks very much. Pleasure to be with you. Condor Hotels, we're based in Manchester, founded a couple of years ago by a lady by the name of Yvonne Jackson. And Yvonne's been working as an independent consultant in the hospitality industry for about the last 10 years or so. And Condor Hotels focus on independent hoteliers and independent hospitality businesses. And as you say, I work with Yvonne on an associate level and as a hotel director. We have a number of clients in and around Manchester and others in England and into Wales. And then we provide a range of services to them. And within that skill set, if you will, there are feasibility studies, there's strategic advice, there's financial information, sales and marketing, digital marketing, crikey, what else? Revenue management, recruitment, HR, capital investment. We go on. We've a large, with a wealth of experience through the hospitality sector, and myself individually, just over the last 30 years or so. Not that it could possibly look that way, I confess.
I wouldn't say anything, Julian, believe you
Well,
me. Obviously, the last 3 or 4 months, I would imagine, have been very challenging, both for yourself as a company, but
yeah.
also for the sector as well. And just give us a sort of feeling for what it's been like.
Sure. So, well, obviously a very, very strange time, as you say. So if I just think about hotels at the moment, so 23rd of March came along and the edict to shut down. And of course, many, many did. There are those that have very, very valiantly carried on providing accommodation services to key workers in particular. And there's been a lot of discussion about that, and certainly a couple of the properties in the city which are well documented for providing those services. But just thinking about those businesses that shut down and closed the doors, furloughed many a member of staff, and that's led to quite a challenging time. It's arguably it's easy to close something down. It's a lot more difficult to open it up. And that's where we're at the moment. We've had staged experience with that. So we have involvement with golf courses, and so the golf courses were up and running a little bit earlier than hotels were able to open their doors. And it's been interesting to see how people have flocked to the golf courses, shall we say, those that may have been either, very unfortunately at this point, made redundant, or those that are on furlough, and where weather's been pretty good, frankly. Membership in a couple of the golf courses we've seen has actually increased, and the pay and play element has been positive too. So there is a good news story there, albeit that's generally just golf course revenue that's been in place rather than ancillary spend. And we're starting to see the hotels begin to open up now, a number of them. And of course, the challenges that go in there with the requirement to put in your COVID-19 risk assessment prior to opening. Which is reasonably well published, and I think most have got the message now that needs to happen.
Yeah. So the current state of play, things are beginning to open again. Those that are open, are they seeing a steady flow of custom in regards to hotels, or is it, scrabbling around a little bit for scraps off the table?
It's a real mix. So you might argue that city centre properties would normally see bounce back first from any industry hit, but in this instance, the city centre properties are the ones that are seeing a slow return. It's very much more those leisure-based properties where there's leisure-based customer demand, or indeed a leisure base that's already in place to get in touch with. That's the sector that's starting to come back, and it's coming back faster than the corporate side. And indeed, in city centre properties, where there's been a demand for international corporate business, that international element hasn't returned, certainly not yet. And so the city centre properties, I believe, having a much harder time of it at the moment.
Okay, and finally, what do you see happening sort of in the near to longer term future? Do you think there'll have to be major changes made? Do you think we're here with all these measures that are in place to get things going again? Can you see them lasting, well, for the indefinite future, I suppose, really?
Well, as many people said, COVID and coronavirus hasn't gone away yet. And even at the point at which there's a vaccine is a vaccine. It doesn't mean that the virus isn't still live. So I think quite a lot of the measures that we see in terms of safe distancing, social distancing, safe distancing, hand sanitization as an example, and within properties, the steps that they're taking to mitigate distancing to increase capacity. I think those are here for the foreseeable future, without a doubt. I think there's two things here. I think there's a bit of a negative view. So if I put forward my negative view first, that says I think there's a bit of a headwind approaching, which will cause concern. Properties with reduced income, reduced capacity, bank covenant testing coming back. I think around September time, the banks I think have behaved pretty well so far. Furlough scheme beginning to unwind. Winter months trade ahead of us, with certainly fewer people wanting to sit outside, perhaps in November or December. We're heading towards a bit of a storm here, I think. And unless the meetings and events industry can open up with significant confidence, Christmas trade, I think, is going to be a bit of a challenge. So there are going to be some redundancies, there are going to be some casualties, and that's the negative side. I think on the slightly more positive term, though, let's think that way too. I think the banks have behaved pretty well so far. I think it will depend on what their attitude is to the financial viability of the assets that they have on their books and how they're prepared to view that. Whether that means some of the businesses are actually perfectly viable, but they need a new business plan and they just perhaps need to refinance. And certainly, you know, dare I say it as a plug, Condor Hotels can help with all of that side of things. But it's going to have to be a bit of teamwork here. And the lenders are going to have to play their part in supporting businesses in order to make sure that they can survive. But that the new plans that need to be in there, very much dynamic plans that need to be in there, I think could well see a positive as we start to go through into probably March, April 2021. That would be a real summary view.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Julian, for that real expert insight there into the hotels and the hospitality bit in particular. And again, it's the one that's sort of grabbing most of the headlines because it's the one that's most immediate and probably impacts on a lot of people. And I think it's useful to hear from you and also from last week as well around what's happening within that sector. We'll be looking at all the sectors as we go through in the coming weeks. But thank you very much, Julian, for joining us today and giving us that insight. And we're now moving on to international trade. And I'd just like to ask Susanna just to join in. Susanna Cordoba, Head of International Trade. We've heard a lot in the last few weeks over the help and support we can give and from different members of the trade team at the Chamber. But often we need a little bit more help and support, or businesses need a little help and support, especially in overseas markets. Susanna, we've got access to a wide range of help and support through partners, but how important is this to businesses to have somebody there that knows markets inside out of where you're wanting to trade?
I think, nothing beats having somebody that has that market knowledge, is on the ground, or has the resource to be on the ground to understand what are the intrinsicies of not just the business culture, but also the technicalities of going to a new market. And that's why we've been very much focused on widening up our global business network and finding the right partners for our customers and members. I think working with Crayfish has been a really good partnership, as they offer a very flexible and innovative services, which are affordable, and yet it can go as detailed as they need to be, and also as high level as they need to be, from perhaps a translation, just a one-off translation, into a more complex and in-depth market research.
Yeah, thanks very much. And Susanna just mentioned they're our next guests. They're from Crayfish. I'd like to ask Zhao Li and Jem Ru. Zhao Li is the co-founder and Jem Ru is the head of business development and sales for Crayfish. They are one of our strategic partners, our international strategic partners, and they support SMEs from the UK to enter the Chinese market. They're based in the UK, and China can provide those expertise and connections that Susanna's just mentioned on the ground. They've also got an online marketplace as well, which is extremely useful as well. So first of all, Zhao, I'd like to ask you, what industries have been impacted most and least during and after the pandemic?
Thanks very much, Chris. Very happy to be here today, and thanks very much for Susanna and also your introduction of my company. So that saves me a lot of time already.
That's okay.
So based on please let me know. Yeah. No, it's pretty accurate and pretty good. So thanks very much. And from our own experiences of working with different companies in different industries in the past 3 months, I would say, actually, for us, it's actually started in January, the impact of the pandemic, because it hits China first. So it was almost half a year of our businesses. So we had a lot of clients who were heavily impacted, and some clients even thrived through this pandemic. So in general, I think China, on the other hand, is on the way of back in terms of economy recovery. So the Q1 GDP in China dropped 6.8%, but in Q2 the GDP in China has already recovered by 3.2%. I think that's a good sign for companies who would like to do business with China already. And in terms of industries that are impacted most, like what Julian just mentioned, the recreation industries, including hotels, traveling, catering, entertainment, has been hit the most almost in China. But recently, I think it was last week, China allows to reopen the cinemas again. So that can actually drive the economy up a little bit, I believe. And the other industries that are hit most, including logistics, and the same logic applies here because of the pandemic, the disruptions, and also because a lot of companies are starting to thinking not to move the supply chain out of China, but to diverse their sourcing and their supply chain requirement from just China to a China plus one strategy, meaning that they're actually moving part of the supply chain, not just based in China, but to some other countries, including Southeast Asia, that we're also helping clients to do that as well. And for the industries that are hit least are almost the digital empowered industries. That includes the what Chinese people called the new digital infrastructure. That's 5G, IoT, machine learning, mobile payments, AI, big data, blockchain, and also the digital health industry has been doing really well in China because of the vaccine development, and because everyone is in quarantine, then telemedicine, remote patient monitoring are also growing in China. And the last but not least industry is the edutech industry. So I think I saw a report from Oliver Wyman. It mentions that it predicts the annual growth of the China's online after-school tutoring market is going to be 30 to 40% for the next 5 years. So it means that as British companies and British schools who have really long heritage and very respectful heritage by Chinese people of the education side, it's a great opportunity for companies to go there now. And there's industry which are impacted both positively and negatively. It's a little bit more as a mix. So for example, retail industry. Some categories in retailer industries are growing really well, including food and drinks. So when people are quarantined and they can only cook at home and they snack a lot, like what we do here. So that industry, that category increases a lot. On the other hand, industries like luxury goods are declining a little bit in China. However, a lot of Chinese people usually when they go abroad, they purchase from abroad. Now they buy domestically. So that impact hasn't been transferred directly to the sales value. But in general, if you look at the luxury industry as a whole, it has a negative impact. That would be my answer. Brief answer.
Okay, no, that's great, because I think the key thing is there, and it's a bit like everywhere, that, I mean, you know, this is a global pandemic, it's affected everybody, but in that you will have people that have done well and opened up new opportunities as well. I use this phrase where we've had a sort of enforced innovation and where people have had to start to do things differently, and it's like the China plus one strategy now, you know, that wasn't a thing, but all of a sudden now it is the way that people have got to think about things. So some really interesting things there, and again gives a scale of some of the things that we're dealing with here. Jen, just moving over to you now. What should you do now if you do want to start trading with China? What's the advice you can give to people around trading with China?
Yeah. So as we just talk about, so although this is a global pandemic, but I think the fundamentals for international trade and cross-border trade isn't changed, because UK economy is fundamentally still more like export oriented, and China and Asia remains the most rapidly growing market for all industries. And based on that, there are still many opportunities for its creative industry, for the tech industry, and also for different kinds of British brands. We would always suggest business to prepare yourself well before you go into China, no matter whether you are like going to sell in China or to manufacture in China. You need to firstly protect yourself by registering your trademark and protect your IP. And that's quite just to, this is the first step, always the first step, or you can call it step 0 to start to trade with China. And secondly, I will say that to better position yourself in a new market, you need to do a thorough market research to make sure you understand the landscape very deeply, and to plan in a long-term view what's the next steps to find the right direction in China. And also, I think then it will come down to who you will work with to support you on different aspects. You may need to find a factory to manufacture different products, or you need to find a distributor or a service provider to help you to do the digital marketing, or to help you to do the website localization. I think you will need a network to support you on all different aspects. Yeah, and to have that connection, it will be, I'll say you better to have a platform like a Crayfish to establish the connection. And all our providers and the vetted suppliers, they have the cross-border knowledge. They know the essentials, how to bridge the link between the UK and the partners you are going to work with.
Yeah. That's absolutely brilliant. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah, so and during this pandemic, we also designed new services and also programs. One of the programs we are offering to all businesses are called China eStart. And through this program, we will guide you through all the different steps to point you to the right direction to work with China. Yeah.
Okay, that's absolutely brilliant, and that is a absolutely superb example there. The type and help and support working with strategic partners like Crayfish that we can give to members coming into the chamber and saying we need some help with. It might just be simple basic stuff, or it might be very complicated. We've got people that we work with like Crayfish, like Zhao and Jane here, that just can help people. Hands-on experience over in the market you're wanting to trade with, as well as knowing how it works the other way as well. So I think that's an absolutely superb example of that. Thank you very much for giving us an insight into the work of Crayfish. And like I said, it's great that we can work with you as strategic partners, and we know that we will carry on doing with that for some time to come too. So thank you very much for joining us today. With that, a little insight there into another part of what we can offer through our international trade team. So the last speaker today is Subra, and we're going to have a quick conversation around some of the policy and campaign work that we've been up to in the last couple of days. We heard this morning around a new transport group that the Secretary of State for Transport, Grant Shapps, is setting up, called the Northern Transport Acceleration Council. It sounds like some sort of 1970s prog rock band or something, a bit like Emerson, Lake and Palmer or something. It's the most bizarrely named thing, but I presume it's been set up with a particular purpose in mind. Subra, what is the Northern Transport Acceleration Council, and more importantly, will it actually work and deliver something?
Thank you, Chris. Good afternoon, everyone. So yes, this morning Grant Shapps made a series of announcements. Included in it was a promise of 600 million for making improvements to the Trans-Pennine Line, electrification, digital signaling, doubling of tracks in some locations, etc., etc. But also mentioned was this new body that you mentioned, the Northern Transport Acceleration Council. It has been set up with Grant Shapps as Secretary of State for Transport as the chair. It will include the Northern Powerhouse Minister. It will also include elected mayors and council leaders from the North. The intention seems to be to give local leaders a direct line to ministers to discuss infrastructure improvements and then speed up the process by which infrastructure improvements are delivered in the North. That part is great. However, in 2018, Transport for the North was set up with almost identical objectives Yeah. And so the question really for us policy wonks is this. So you had one body in 2018 that you set up. Presumably you have had to set up another one because the first one didn't work. So and that's the key thing here. We have had a litany of announcements. We have had funding promises. 6 billion was promised last year when Boris Johnson became Prime Minister, almost a year ago, I think, for the Manchester Leeds line. But here's the thing, ministers have talked the talk about delivering infrastructure improvements, they're not. And it is high time that they actually started walking that talk, because without that, there is no leveling up here.
Yeah. In a way, it's a little bit like what Julian mentioned there. It's very easy to shut things down, a lot difficult to get them going again. I think it's a bit easy to set groups and give them a fancy name like the Northern Transport Acceleration Council, rather than get on and build some railway track, which is what we all need, really. But hey, that's government. Also, yesterday, the Mayor Andy Burnham made a couple of announcements about things that, as a chamber, we've worked on. Feels like the past several years, actually. One of them is the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework, and the other one is the Clean Air Plan. And again, the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework, that's been around for a number of years, and it's grown in size. I think the last version we saw was about 1,100 pages long. What is the Spatial Framework, Subra, in very, one sentence answers, and why is it important?
So the spatial framework is a land allocation plan. So it will be the plan that will determine where and how housing developments come up in Greater Manchester, and then what other associated infrastructure is needed for housing development. So roads, transport lanes, collection of bins, electrification, and all of that. So that it's a very important plan because it will determine the future of Greater Manchester. And one of the key issues in GM for the past several years has been lack of housing. It has been constantly come up. And at this particular time, when we are focusing on an economic recovery, house building and the construction sector can actually help the economic recovery. And so it is an extremely important plan for that reason. The third iteration of it will come out in about 8 weeks' time, and there will be an open consultation from November.
Okay, and these are really important things. And like I said, it's very easy just to sort of dismiss it as a load of local council gobbledygook and loads of pages and one thing and another. But it really is important, especially as we're starting to, the phrase build back better, I suppose, really is part of this recovery coming out of COVID-19. It's so important that we've got some of these plans and frameworks in place to make sure that things are delivered in the right way. So it's really important. Again, look out for this. We've got the Clean Air Plan as well that will be coming out sometime before the end of the year. Another consultation on that. We've done consultations on that in the past, but again, things are completely different now. We are in a different world post-COVID, so we will be coming back out to members, asking their views on it. And another reminder about something we're asking as well is the recovery tracker as well. Please look out for that. Please fill it in. We want to make sure that we've got our finger on the pulse when it comes to seeing that shape of that recovery as we come out of one of the biggest economic shocks to the system that we've all lived through in our lifetime. Subra, thank you very much for joining us. I'm just conscious we're there or thereabouts on 2:30. Again, another packed 30 minutes, and we've covered a lot of stuff today. We've had new services, our Chamber Finance Finder being launched today. You heard it here first. With more details, and the official launch will be next week. We find out a lot about our international trade partnerships. We've got another great insight into the world of hospitality, and we touched on some of the other subjects a lot closer to home that will actually be steering some of our work as the country's largest Chamber of Commerce, backed up by our members over the coming months. So thank you very much. Thank you to all our speakers, to Reet, to Julian, to Joe, to Jane, to Susanna and Subra. Thank you very much for joining us. Look out for the YouTube, look out for the podcast. We'll be getting that up in the next 24 hours. So if you missed anything, you can always rewatch it at your leisure. All that remains for me to say is thanks once again for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully see you again, same time next week. Thank you very much.